David Miller held the golden pen. Its weight felt like the anchor of his entire empire. He was seconds away from signing a merger with Sterling Corporation, a deal that promised billions, but demanded his soul. The air in the boardroom was thick with the scent of expensive cologne and the silent greed of men in tailored suits. Then, the door creaked open. Anna, a quiet woman from the cleaning crew, pushed her cart in. "Sorry," she murmured, her eyes downcast. "Just emptying the trash." The high-powered executives didn't even look at her. To them, she was part of the furniture. But as Anna bent down near David's chair, she leaned in close. Her voice was a ghost of a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the air conditioner. "Don't sign. It's a trap." David froze. The pen hovered millimeters from the paper, a drop of ink threatening to ruin the contract. He looked up, stunned, but Anna was already pushing her cart toward the door, her face a mask of professional indifference. "David," Leandro, his partner of 15 years, asked with a smile that felt suddenly sharp. "Everything all right? Ready to make history?" David looked at Leandro, then at Javier, the Sterling representative. For the first time, the pressure in the room felt like a noose. "I need 5 minutes," David blurted out, standing abruptly. He caught up to Anna in the hallway. He pulled her into a small break room and locked the door. "Explain yourself," he demanded, his eyes burning with intensity. "And you better convince me you're not insane." Anna didn't flinch. "I've worked the night shift here for 8 months, Mr. Miller. People talk when they think no one is listening. I overheard Leandro and the Sterling people. This merger isn't a growth strategy, it's a debt dump. They are using your company to hide billions in losses. If you sign, you lose everything." David stared at her. She had nothing to gain and her job to lose. "Do you have proof? Photos? Records? Screenshots?" she replied firmly. "Meet me here at 7 p.m. David walked back into that boardroom a changed man. When Javier pressured him to sign, citing market instability, David saw the desperation behind the man's eyes. Anna was right, the pressure wasn't normal. He closed the folder and walked out, leaving his friends fuming in his wake. At exactly 7 p.m., the billionaire and the janitor sat across from each other at a plastic break room table. Anna pulled out her phone, her hands trembling. "It started 3 weeks ago," she whispered, scrolling through her gallery. "I was cleaning Leandro's office. He was with a woman named Sophia. They weren't talking about business, David. They were talking about ending you." David stared at the blurry photo on Anna's phone, and the world seemed to tilt. "Sophia," he whispered. Sophia Delgado, his ex-girlfriend. The woman who had left him claiming they were too different, was now leaning into Leandro, his best friend, in a dark corner of a restaurant. "They're together, David," Anna said, her voice steady. "And they aren't just dating. They are hunting." She played a recording. The static was heavy, but Leandro's voice was unmistakable. "Once he signs, we take full control. David is too naive to notice. It worked when Sophia left him, and it'll work now." Then, Sophia's laugh, a sound David once loved, cut through the air like a blade. Anna swiped to images of a secret contract. "Look at this clause. The version you have says you keep 60% control. But, in the real filing, you're left with only 20. It's document fraud, David. Pure and simple." David leaned against the cold glass of the window, looking at the Chicago skyline. 15 years of brotherhood with Leandro, destroyed by a $15 million bribe from Sterling. "Why are you doing this, Anna?" he asked. "You're risking everything." "Because it's right," she replied. But David felt there was more. The next morning, driven by a gut feeling, David went to Human Resources. He pulled Anna Santos's file, expecting to see a simple history of service work. Instead, his eyes widened. Northwestern University. Degree in Business Administration. Former consultant at McKinsey & Company. McKinsey, David muttered. He found Anna later, cleaning windows on the 12th floor. Northwestern Corporate Finance. Why didn't you tell me you were a genius in finance? Anna dropped her cloth, her face turning pale. Because it doesn't matter, she said bitterly. In this building, I'm just the Latina cleaning lady. No one looks at my resume, they only see the uniform. She explained the cold reality, how she was passed over for promotions despite her brilliance, and how she was eventually forced out. My sister Maria has a heart defect, Anna whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I need $200,000 for her surgery. This job, as low as it pays, provides the health insurance that keeps her alive. I can't afford to be a consultant right now. I have to be a sister. David felt a knot in his chest. A brilliant mind, trained at one of the best firms in the world, was emptying trash cans because of prejudice and desperation. That's why I saw the forgery instantly, Anna added, picking up her bucket. I didn't just overhear things, David. I audited your destruction while I was cleaning your floors. You warned me because you've been watching me, David said, the realization sinking in. Anna didn't look away. Partly yes, she admitted, her voice trembling but firm. But also because you're different. I've watched you for months, Mr. Miller. You treat the person who empties your trash with the same respect as the person who signs your checks. When I saw them planning to destroy you, the same way a corporate machine once ruined me, I couldn't stay quiet. Before David could respond, a voice like ice echoed down the hall. David, what are you doing here? It was Leandro. He approached with a look of sharpened curiosity, his eyes darting between the billionaire and the janitor. David recovered quickly. Just checking on the maintenance, Leandro. You know how particular I am about the details. Leandro's eyes narrowed as he looked at Anna, who had immediately returned to scrubbing the windows. Since when do you personally supervise the cleaning staff? He asked, his tone dripping with suspicion. David forced a casual smile, though his heart was racing. Since I decided to start paying attention to everything. Now, let's get to lunch. We have a merger to finalize. As they walked away, Leandro's hand on David's shoulder felt like the weight of a betrayal already committed. Trust me, David, Leandro whispered. This deal is the best thing we've ever done. But David wasn't listening. He was thinking of Anna's resume, the brilliant mind hidden under a simple uniform. Later that afternoon, near 5 p.m., the building was nearly empty. Anna was finishing her shift when she heard voices near the executive suite. She pressed herself against the wall, her breath hitching as she recognized the sharp, irritated tone of Sophia. Are you sure it's her? Sophia snapped. I checked the logs and the cameras, Leandro replied, his voice cold and calculating. Anna Santos, 28. Former McKinsey. She's too smart for her own good, Sophia. David's been acting strange, questioning clauses, hesitating. She told him. I'm sure of it. What are we going to do? Sophia asked, panic rising in her voice. I'm going to crush her, Leandro said with a dark laugh. I'll accuse her of theft in front of the whole company. Who's going to believe a fired janitor over a founding partner? Not even David will defend a cleaning lady against me publicly. He's too predictable. Anna felt a cold sweat break out. If she was fired for a cause, she'd lose her salary, her reputation, and worst of all, the health insurance keeping her sister Maria alive. Suddenly, the intercom crackled to life. All employees report to the main auditorium for an urgent safety meeting immediately. Anna straightened her shoulders. She walked into the packed auditorium, her heart hammering against her ribs. She saw David in the front row, looking confused. Leandro stepped onto the stage, a manila folder in his hand, his face a mask of grim authority. Confidential documents have been stolen, Leandro announced into the microphone, the silence in the room deafening. We have identified the person responsible for this act of corporate espionage. He pointed a finger directly at the back of the room. Anna Santos. From the cleaning staff. Come forward. Now. Hundreds of eyes turned to her. The whispers were like stings. Anna felt her legs shaking, but she didn't bow her head. She walked down the long aisle, past her co-workers, past the executives, until she stood at the very front, a lone woman in a uniform facing a man in a $3,000 suit. "Miss Santos," Leandro's voice boomed through the auditorium, dripping with a cold, fake authority. "Photos of confidential company documents were found on your phone. How do you explain that?" Anna looked at David. He sat in the front row, his face a mask of shock and confusion. She started, but Leandro cut her off like a blade. "Furthermore, security footage shows you in executive offices outside of cleaning hours." He tossed printed photos onto the table. David picked one up, his jaw tightening in what looked like pure disappointment. "Theft of intellectual property is a federal crime." Leandro stepped closer to her, looming over her small frame. "But because of your record, we're offering a quiet termination. No police. Just leave." "This isn't fair." Anna's voice finally cracked through the silence. "I was trying to protect." "Protect what?" Leandro barked. "Your own pockets. Were you planning to sell us out to the competitors?" "No. I was protecting Mr. Miller from you." Leandro slammed his fist on the podium. "Enough. Security, escort Miss Santos out. She is no longer permitted on these premises." As the guards grabbed her arms, Anna's eyes locked onto David's. "David, please. You saw the evidence. You know who I really am." David stood up slowly. For a heartbeat, Anna thought he would save her. But he looked away. "I'm sorry it's come to this, Anna," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "But the evidence is clear." The world shattered. The man she had risked everything for chose his betrayer over his savior. Anna pulled away from the guards with a final flash of dignity. "I can walk myself." As she reached the door, she turned back, her voice ringing out for everyone to hear. "When you finally find out the truth, David, remember, you had the chance to do the right thing today, and you chose not to." Anna walked into the cold Chicago night with nothing but a cardboard box and a broken heart. But David couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., haunted by the desperation in Anna's eyes, he drove back to the empty office. He sat at his computer, digging deeper than he ever had. Anna was a McKinsey-trained expert. Why would someone like her risk a criminal record for a few photos? It didn't add up. After 3 hours of searching encrypted servers, he found it. Addendum C. A file that shouldn't have existed. As he opened the document, his blood turned to ice. 80% of his empire wasn't being merged, it was being siphoned. Transferred to a shell company called Sterling International Holdings. And as he scrolled to the bottom of the digital signature page, the names of the secret shareholders appeared: Leandro Silva and Sofia Delgado. Anna hadn't just warned him. She had handed him the keys to his survival, and he had thrown her to the wolves. Cayman Islands. Leandro Vega and Sofia Delgado. David whispered the names, reading the document 3 times just to be sure his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. The plan was as brilliant as it was demonic. David would sign a contract thinking he was the king of a new empire, while in reality, he was handing the keys to a shell company controlled by his best friend and his ex-girlfriend. He dug deeper into the banking records. $23 million. Siphoned under the guise of merger preparations, and moved directly into Leandro's personal accounts. Then came the emails. One from 3 weeks ago hit David like a physical blow. Leandro had written, "David is completely naive. 15 years of friendship blinded him. By the time he realizes what happened, we'll be out of the country." Sophia was right. He really is too predictable. David had to stop. His hands were shaking so hard he couldn't hold the mouse. This was the man who had been the best man at his wedding. The man who held him when his mother passed away. It wasn't just a scam, it was a cold-blooded execution of his life's work. And Sophia, she didn't just leave him 2 years ago because they wanted different things. She left him because she found a partner in crime who was as ruthless as her own dark ambition. By 6 a.m., David had enough evidence to put them both behind bars for a lifetime. But a heavier weight sat on his chest. Ana Santos. He remembered her final words as security dragged her out. Remember, you had the chance to do the right thing today, and you chose not to. She was right. He had been a coward. At 7 a.m., his phone buzzed. It was Leandro, his voice dripping with that same fake, oily sympathy. I couldn't sleep, David. Yesterday was tough, but you did the right thing with that cleaning lady. Yeah, David replied, his voice a flat, controlled mask. The evidence was clear. I'm glad you see it that way. Our big moment is at 9 o'clock. Our friendship means everything to me, David. To me too, Leandro, David said, hanging up. To me too. David didn't go to the meeting. He called in a family emergency and let Leandro fume. Instead, he drove. He drove away from the glass skyscrapers and into the narrow, brick-lined streets of Pilsen. Signs in Spanish, rusty fire escapes, and the smell of fresh panaderia filled the air. This was Anna's world, a world he had ignored from his high-rise office. He pulled up to a weathered apartment building on Lincoln Street. He wasn't there to save his company anymore. He was there to save his soul. But as he looked at the door of apartment 2B, he wondered, after the humiliation he had caused, would Anna even let him in? David Miller's expensive BMW looked like a foreign object in the worn-out streets of Pilsen. He climbed the creaking stairs of the three-story building, each step echoing the guilt in his chest. When he reached apartment 2B, his hand hesitated at the door, a door that had more peeling paint than a billionaire was used to seeing. He knocked. The safety chain rattled. Through a small crack, David saw Anna's face. Her eyes were swollen, red from a night of tears he had caused. What do you want? She asked, her voice as cold as the Chicago wind. Anna, I know the truth now, David said, pleading. I found everything, the shell company, the bank transfers, the recordings. You were right. Anna let out a bitter, hollow laugh. Oh, you found out now? How convenient, David. After you let Leandro humiliate me in front of 200 people? After you let them treat me like a common thief? I can clear your name, Anna. I can fix this. There is nothing to fix, she snapped, starting to close the door. David shoved his hand against the frame. Please. Just 5 minutes. A weak, fragile voice came from inside the apartment. Anna? Who is it? Anna sighed, the fire in her eyes replaced by a weary sadness. She unlatched the chain and let him in. The apartment was small and modest, but it was spotless, filled with the scent of pine and a desperate kind of dignity. Then, David saw her. Maria. She was 22, with the same brown eyes as Anna, but her skin was translucent, almost gray. She moved with a slow, agonizing effort, as if breathing itself was a chore. Hi, Maria said with a faint, angelic smile. You must be Anna's boss. She says you're different from the others. She says you're human. The words hit David like a physical blow. Anna had lost everything, yet she was still protecting her sister from the truth. After Maria retreated to her room to rest, the silence in the room was heavy. She needs a heart valve transplant, Anna whispered, sitting on a worn-out couch. She was born with a defect. Without the surgery, the doctors give her 6 months. The insurance from my job, the job you took from me, covered 60%. I was working every weekend to save the rest. $200,000. David. That's the price of her life. David stood up, his heart breaking. I'll pay it. All of it. Today. No. Anna stood up abruptly, her voice trembling with rage. I don't want your pity or your charity check. It's not pity, Anna. It's responsibility. I betrayed you. Yes, you did, she said, tears finally spilling over. You knew who I was. You knew I was trying to save you, and you still chose your best friend. You chose the lie because it was easier than believing a janitor. I was a coward. David yelled, his frustration boiling over. I was selfish. But let me help her, please. Why? To ease your conscience. Anna walked to the door and flung it open. Maria needs rest, and I need to find a new job. Take your money and your guilt and get out of my home. David walked out, the sound of the deadbolt clicking behind him feeling like a final judgment. But he wasn't giving up. For the next 3 days, he stalled the merger, ignoring Leandro's frantic, greedy calls. He couldn't force Anna to take his money, so he went to the source. He called Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Dr. Rodriguez? My name is David Miller. I'm calling about Maria Santos. I know I'm not authorized, but I'm about to become the hospital's largest donor, and we need to talk about a surgery. An anonymous donation, Mr. Miller? Dr. Rodriguez's voice sounded surprised over the phone. Exactly, David replied, his voice firm but quiet. $200,000 to cover Maria Santos's surgery in full. I want her and her sister to believe it came from a federal medical aid program or a social scholarship. They shouldn't suspect a thing. That is incredibly generous. May I ask what your relationship is to the patient? David paused, looking at the city skyline. Let's just say I owe the Santos family a debt that money can barely repay. On Thursday afternoon, the miracle happened. Anna was sitting in her small kitchen, counting coins for bread, when her phone rang. Miss Santos? This is Dr. Rodriguez. I have wonderful news. Maria has been approved for a special heart case program. Her surgery is fully covered. Anna nearly dropped the phone. The air left her lungs. Covered? But we never applied for any program. Sometimes the hospital finds the fit for you, Anna. What matters is the surgery is scheduled for next Tuesday. Anna ran to Maria's room, tears of pure relief streaming down her face. We did it, Maria. You're going to be okay. She held her sister, both of them sobbing, oblivious to the man in the high-rise office who had just saved their lives in secret. But David knew that money couldn't buy forgiveness. He spent all Saturday searching for Anna. He knew her. She wouldn't just sit at home, she would be working. Finally, at 5 p.m., he found her cleaning the windows of a small accounting firm on Michigan Avenue. She looked exhausted, her hair in a simple ponytail, but she still carried that quiet dignity that now inspired him more than any business mogul ever could. He waited for her to finish and approached her on the sidewalk. Anna, please. Just 5 minutes. She turned, her eyes flashing with annoyance. Are you following me now, David? I heard about Maria's surgery, he said, choosing his words carefully. I'm happy for you. Truly. Thank you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a train to catch. Anna, wait. David walked alongside her. I feel awful. You were right about everything. You risked your life to save me, and when it was my turn to stand up for you, I failed. But that failure taught me who I want to become. I want to be someone worthy of the courage you showed. The cold Chicago wind bit at them, and Anna finally softened. There's a coffee shop on the corner, she murmured. We can talk there. Over 2 steaming cups of hot chocolate, David laid out the folder. I have everything. The wire transfers to Leandro's personal accounts, the emails where they called me naive and predictable. They were going to steal 80% of my life's work. But I need you, Anna. I need your evidence and your testimony to finish them on Monday. And then what? Anna asked, her eyes searching his. Then, I want you back at the company, David said, leaning in. But not in a uniform. I want you as my vice president of operations. You have the degree, the experience at McKinsey, and more integrity than anyone in that boardroom. Anna nearly choked on her drink. VP. David, that's crazy. You are not just anything, he interrupted. You are smart, brave, and the only person I trust. I need you by my side. As they walked to the subway station under the sparkling city lights, the atmosphere between them had shifted. The billionaire and the janitor were gone. there were only two people who had survived a storm together. "David," Anna said at the station entrance. "Thank you for listening. For being the man I hoped you were. And thank you for the second chance." "I'm the one who didn't deserve it, Anna," David whispered. Under the shimmering stars of Chicago, the world felt briefly perfect. David looked at Anna, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "Anna," he whispered, stepping into her space. "Can I kiss you?" She hesitated for only a heartbeat before nodding. The kiss was gentle at first, a soft promise in the night air, but it grew with a sudden, desperate confidence. When they pulled apart, the billionaire and the woman who had been a janitor were both wearing the same smile. "This just made things very complicated," Anna teased. "The best things in life usually do," David replied. "I'll call you tomorrow," she said, disappearing down the subway stairs. "To plan Monday, and to talk about us." David stood there for a long time, feeling invincible. He wasn't alone anymore. He had Anna. But Monday morning didn't bring victory. It brought a nightmare. At 10 a.m., the door to David's office swung open. Leandro walked in, but the best friend was gone. In his place was a man with eyes as cold as a grave. "David, we need to talk about your little midnight investigation on Friday." David's heart skipped a beat. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," Leandro snapped, sitting across from him with a terrifying arrogance. "Do you think I'm stupid? I have eyes everywhere. I know you found the files. I know you talked to the cleaning lady. And I know you're planning to expose us at the 2 p.m. board meeting." The door opened again, and Sophia walked in, looking flawless and lethal. She leaned over and kissed Leandro possessively. "Hello, David. I'm here to witness your surrender." "Surrender?" David stood up, his voice trembling with rage. "I have the proof. I know you two are siphoning millions." Leandro just smiled and turned his phone toward David. On the screen were high-resolution photos, David entering Anna's apartment in Pilsen. David kissing Anna in the street. "So what?" David challenged. "So this," Sophia whispered, leaning forward. "You used company resources to track a former employee. Then, you used company funds to pay for her sister's surgery. A $200,000 anonymous gift? That looks a lot like a bribe to buy a witness's silence, David." She dropped a folder on the desk. It was filled with forged emails and altered records, perfectly crafted to make David look like a corrupt CEO who had used his power to seduce and pay off a subordinate. "No one will believe you," Leandro said, his voice a low growl. "A CEO involved with a janitor? It's a scandal that will bury you. Unless you cooperate." "Cooperate? Cancel the meeting. Destroy the evidence. Sign the sterling contract today," Leandro demanded. When David hesitated, Leandro showed him one last photo, Anna and Maria leaving the hospital. One phone call, David and Anna Santos never works again. And accidents happen to sick girls in this city. "Don't test me." David looked at Sophia, searching for the woman he once loved. "Sophia, do you really agree with this? Threatening an innocent, sick girl?" Sophia laughed, a sharp, metallic sound. "David, you were always so idealistic. I didn't break up with you because we weren't compatible. I left because you were limited. You dreamed of a good company, Leandro dreams of an empire. He's willing to do whatever it takes. The choice was easy." David felt the walls closing in. He had the truth, but they had his heart, and they were holding it hostage with a photograph of a sick girl. "You built a $500 million company, David," Leandro sneered, pacing the office. "But you limited yourself with ethics. Just imagine what you could have been if you were flexible." "I don't want success if it costs my soul," David replied, his voice flat. Sophia stood by Leandro, their hands intertwined in a pact of greed. "And that's why people like you always lose to people like us." Leandro checked his gold watch. Noon. You have 1 hour. Either you sign the Sterling contract, or we destroy you. And that cleaning lady and her sick sister? Their quiet, insignificant lives end today. When they left, David felt the walls of his empire closing in. He called Anna, his voice breaking as he lied to the only person he trusted. Anna, the meeting is cancelled. Legal complications. I need more time. David, are you okay? Her voice was filled with concern. I'm fine, he lied, hating the taste of the word. But Anna wasn't just the cleaning lady. She was a woman who had survived McKinsey and the streets of Chicago. She knew the sound of a man being strangled by a threat. That night, she didn't go home. She used her old access codes to slip into the basement of Miller Technologies. Inside Leandro's office, she found the war room. Photos of her and Maria at the hospital were pinned to a board with the words, "Pressure Point," scrawled in red. But Leandro had been sloppy. He was so arrogant that he recorded his own calls. Anna found a digital recorder in his desk. She hit play, and her blood ran cold as she heard Leandro threatening Maria's life. She didn't panic. She audited. She copied the files, the fake emails, and the recordings onto her phone and vanished into the night. At 6 a.m. Tuesday, she was at David's door. "I know he's blackmailing you, David," she said, pressing play on the recording. David sat heavily on his couch, his face in his hands. "I can't risk your life, Anna." "He made a fatal mistake," Anna whispered, taking his hands. "He recorded his own crimes. We have the proof. We strike today, at 2 p.m. The auditorium was packed. Board members whispered, and Leandro sat in the front row, a wolf in a tailored suit, waiting for David to surrender his empire. David stepped to the microphone, his hands steady for the first time in days. "I have 2 announcements. First, I'd like to introduce our new Vice President of Operations, Anna Santos." The room exploded in murmurs. Leandro stood up, his face turning a dark shade of purple. "This is ridiculous. David, you can't be serious." "Sit down, Mr. Vega," David said, his voice echoing with a power that shook the room. "You'll have your turn to speak. But first, we have some audio for the board to hear." Anna stepped to the microphone, her head held high. The janitor was gone. The executive had returned. "I believe many of you remember the unfortunate circumstances of my last appearance in this auditorium," Anna began. Her voice didn't shake. It was the voice of a leader. "Today, I'm here to reveal the truth behind those events." The projector flickered to life. "This," Anna pointed to the screen, "is the merger contract shown to Mr. Miller. It promises him 65% control." She clicked to the next slide, her eyes like steel. "And this is the version they intended to sign today, the real one. Here, David Miller is left with only 15%. A complete corporate hijacking." The room exploded into a deafening murmur. Leandro's face turned from an arrogant mask to a ghostly pale. Sophia stood up, her voice shrill. "This is outrageous. These images are fake. Photoshopped. Are they?" Anna smiled coldly. "Then maybe you'd prefer to hear the audio." The speakers roared with Leandro's own voice. "David is completely naive. 15 years of friendship blinded him. We'll be out of the country before he realizes what happened." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Leandro's stammering. That was taken out of context." "Was it?" Anna played the next one. Sophia's voice filled the room. "It's not hate, it's ambition. David was always too limited, too small for my dreams." Sophia looked like she wanted to scream, but David stepped to the mic. "There's more." Anna projected the bank records. $23 million moved to Leandro's personal accounts. Leandro stood up, desperate, looking at the board members who once respected him. "David, we're friends. Are you going to believe her? A janitor. I believe her because she's the only person in this room who never lied to me." David's voice thundered. The representative from Sterling Corporation stood up immediately. "Mr. Miller, we had no idea. We were deceived by these two. We want to discuss a legitimate merger on honest terms in the future." Leandro's mask finally shattered. He let out a bitter, jagged laugh. "You know what? I don't regret it. You were always too weak, David. You deserve to lose." "No." A new voice echoed from the back. Detective Johnson of the Chicago PD walked down the aisle with two officers. "What he deserves is justice. Leandro Vega, Sofia Delgado, you are under arrest for fraud, forgery, and extortion." As the handcuffs clicked, the auditorium erupted in applause. David looked at Anna, a deep, silent thank you in his eyes. "How did the police know?" David whispered. "Miss Santos contacted us this morning with evidence so clear it's a prosecutor's dream," the detective replied. When the room emptied, David and Anna were left alone on the stage where their lives had nearly been destroyed. "So," Anna smiled. "How was my first day as VP?" "Unforgettable," David whispered, pulling her into his arms. "You saved me, Anna. In every way." "We saved each other," she replied, kissing him right there in the heart of the company they would now rebuild together. 2 weeks later, Anna sat in her new office, overlooking Lake Michigan. No more uniforms. No more buckets. She was the vice president of Miller Technologies. A soft knock came at the door. David entered with a massive bouquet of red roses. "I know you've been working non-stop," he said softly. "But you didn't just save a company, Anna. You helped me see the man I want to be." "You were always that man, David," she smiled. "You just needed to trust the right instincts." He took her to North Avenue Beach as the October sun painted the sky in shades of fire and gold. "Do you remember the first time we really talked?" David asked, taking her hands in the sand. "You showed me what real courage looks like. You risked everything." Anna felt her heart race. The wind was cold, but the look in David's eyes was pure warmth, an intensity that told her this was no longer about business. It was about a life built on the truth. The October sun was sinking low, turning the waters of Lake Michigan into a sea of liquid gold. David took a deep breath, his voice thick with emotion. "Anna, let me finish. All my life, I thought success was about the numbers, the power, the name on the building. But when I almost lost it all, I realized none of it matters if you aren't standing next to me." To Anna's shock, the man who controlled half the skyline of Chicago knelt down in the sand. "Anna Santos," he said, his eyes shining. "You came into my life as a brave cleaning lady and became my savior, my partner, and the love of my life. You taught me that a person's worth isn't in their job, but in their character. You had the courage to tell me the hard truths when no one else would." He pulled a velvet box from his pocket. Inside, a single diamond captured the last rays of the sun. "I can't imagine a future without you. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Anna's face. She looked at the man before her, not the CEO who had faltered, but the man who had grown worthy of her heart. "David, yes. 1,000 times, yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Anna marveled at the fit. "How did you know my size?" "I had an accomplice," David smiled. "I asked Maria for her blessing first. I promised her I would spend the rest of my life taking care of both of you." 3 months later, the Chicago winter was softened by the warmth of a celebration. Anna stood before a mirror in a dress of simple, radiant elegance. Maria walked in, looking vibrant and healthy. Her surgery had been a total success. "You look beautiful, Anna," Maria whispered, adjusting her sister's veil. "You deserve all of this." The ceremony took place in the Lincoln Park Conservatory, a tropical paradise of palms and orchids hidden away from the city's chill. When Anna walked down the glass aisle, David's face lit up with a smile that made her heart race just as fast as the first day they met. "Anna," David said during his vows, "you came into my life whispering a truth I didn't want to hear. You taught me that real strength comes from integrity. I promise to be worthy of your courage every single day. David, Anna replied, you showed me that people really can change. I promise to stand by your side through every joy and every hardship. At the reception, the atmosphere was electric. Under Anna's leadership as VP, Miller Technologies had reached new heights, but the biggest news was yet to come. As they stood together, Anna leaned in and whispered a secret into David's ear. David, I'm pregnant. 6 weeks. The room erupted in a roar of joy as David lifted her into his arms, spinning her around under the crystal chandeliers. Later that night, on a rooftop overlooking the city lights, they held each other. From janitor and CEO to husband and wife expecting a child, Anna mused. What an incredible journey. The best part, David said, kissing her forehead, is that our story is just beginning.